Utter. I thought my roommate was just a little weird until I discovered hidden cameras all over the apartment and realized he'd been secretly filming me for months. If you've ever ignored a weird gut feeling about someone, don't. I learned that the hard way. It's funny when I look back now, there were so many tiny moments that should have set off alarms in my head. The way he looked at me sometimes. The way I'd hear faint creaks in the hallway at 2 a.m. when I knew I was the only one awake. The way my stuff would be in slightly different positions than I remembered. But at the time, I told myself it was nothing. That I was just being paranoid. That Tyler was just quirky. Let me back up. It all started about 8 months ago when I moved into this 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Rent had been eating me alive living alone, so when a friend of a friend said his cousin was looking for a roommate, I jumped on it. I ain't it. That cousin was Tyler. When I first met him, he seemed fine. A little shy maybe, late 20s, quiet voice, kinda lanky, always wearing hoodies even when it was warm. He didn't make much eye contact, but I figured he was just introverted. The apartment itself was perfect for me. Modern kitchen, decent-sized living room, and my bedroom was big enough for my desk and bed. Tyler already lived there and had the master bedroom, which came with its own bathroom. I got the smaller one and shared the hall bathroom with guests. We signed the sublease papers, and just like that, I had a new roommate. At first, it was easy enough living with him. We weren't best friends or anything, but we'd exchange a few words in the kitchen or watch TV together once in a while. He kept mostly to himself, spending a lot of time in his room. I assumed he worked from home because I rarely saw him leave, though sometimes he'd disappear late at night and not come back until early morning. The first odd thing I noticed was his sleep schedule. It wasn't just that he went to bed late, it was how late. Sometimes I'd be heading out for work at 8 a.m. and see him still awake, hoodie up, sipping coffee in the living room like it was midnight. Other times, I'd come home from a night out at 2 a.m. and find him wide awake, sitting on the couch in the dark, phone in hand. Weird, but whatever. People have different sleep patterns, right? Then there was the locking. Tyler locked his bedroom door every single time he went in, even if he was just stepping inside for a second. I once heard the click of the lock as soon as the door shut behind him, even though I was just grabbing water from the kitchen. I told myself, hey, everyone values privacy. Maybe he's had bad roommates before, but I couldn't help but feel like it was excessive. The first real moment that unsettled me happened about 2 weeks in. I came home from work one evening, set my keys on the counter, and went to change clothes. When I came back out, my coffee mug, the one I'd left on the table that morning, was on the opposite end of the counter. It wasn't dramatic, just a couple feet away from where I'd left it, but I knew I hadn't touched it. I asked Tyler if he'd moved it, and he shrugged. Yeah, I was wiping the counter. Except the counter wasn't wiped. There were still crumbs there. Still, I didn't push it. A few nights later, I woke up to get a glass of water. It was maybe 2:30 a.m. The apartment was quiet, but as I stepped into the hallway, I saw him. Tyler was just standing there, right outside my bedroom door. He wasn't knocking or about to say something. He was just facing my door, hands in his hoodie pocket. When he saw me, he flinched slightly and mumbled something about just heading to the kitchen. I forced a laugh and said, "You scared the crap out of me," before brushing past him. But my heart was pounding. Who just stands outside someone's bedroom in the middle of the night? Then came the lights. A couple times I came home to find my bedroom light on, even though I knew I'd turned it off. Once, my desk lamp was on when I hadn't touched it in days. The most unnerving moment was when I left for the weekend to visit family. I came back Sunday night and the ceiling light in my room was flickering like an old horror movie. Tyler said it just started doing that, but it worked perfectly fine the next morning. Around this point, I started paying more attention, and the more I noticed, the less quirky his behavior felt. Like how he asked oddly specific questions about my day. Not just, how was work? But things like, so you usually take your shower around 7, right? Or, you don't use the hall bathroom in the morning, do you? The kind of questions that made me pause and wonder, why does he need to know that? One Saturday morning, I decided to sleep in. Around 9 a.m., I woke to the faint sound of footsteps in my room. My heart leapt, but when I opened my eyes, the door was closed. I convinced myself I dreamed it. The last straw, or what should have been, came one night when I was half asleep and heard the faint click on my bedroom door handle. It didn't open, but it was definitely turned, like someone was testing if it was unlocked. I lay frozen, pretending to still be asleep. After a few seconds, I heard slow, quiet footsteps retreating down the hall. The next morning, Tyler acted totally normal. And here's the thing, I didn't move out. I didn't confront him. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe he was just awkward and socially clueless. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, because the alternative that something was actually wrong was way scarier. But I wasn't imagining it. Not even close. And what I'd eventually find out, well, let's just say this was only the beginning. It's strange how once you start paying attention to someone's behavior, you realize they've been showing you who they are the whole time. You just didn't want to see it before. After the hallway at night thing and the weird door handle incident, I told myself I'd keep a closer eye on Tyler. Not in an obvious way, just quietly noting little details. I figured if there was nothing wrong, I'd feel ridiculous for being so suspicious. But if something was off, well, I'd catch it. It didn't take long. The first thing I noticed was how much Tyler seemed to know about my routine, and not in a we live together so we bump into each other way. It was specific. One morning, I was rushing to work and skipping breakfast when Tyler casually said, "No cereal today? That's unusual for you." I froze mid-shoe tie. I'd never told him what I usually eat in the mornings. Yeah, he could have noticed over time, but the way he said it was observant to the point of being unsettling. A couple days later, I was showering after a run when, out of nowhere, Tyler said as I passed him in the hallway, "You really like singing in the shower, huh?" Now, I hadn't ever told him I sing in the shower, and I'm not talking loud belting either. I'm talking under my breath. You'd have to be in the bathroom to hear it singing. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Yeah, I guess I do," before locking myself in my room. That one stuck with me, because unless he'd been standing right outside the bathroom, how would he know? Then there was the package. I'd ordered a new set of headphones online. The day they arrived, I got home from work and found the box on the kitchen counter. Tyler was sitting at the table, scrolling on his phone. "Package came for you," he said without looking up. I thanked him, picked it up, and immediately noticed the seal was broken. Not completely torn, but the tape had clearly been peeled up and pressed back down. Inside, the inner packaging had been shifted, like someone had pulled it out to look before putting it back. I didn't want to accuse him without proof, so I said nothing, but I didn't touch the headphones that night. I just put the box in my room and stared at it for a long time, my brain running circles. A week later, I came home early from work. Tyler didn't know I'd be back. I texted him earlier, saying I had to work late. When I walked into the apartment, everything seemed normal at first. The TV was off, his door was closed. Then I opened my bedroom door, and there he was, standing by my desk. We both froze. Hey, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "What are you doing in here?" Tyler blinked like I'd just caught him doing something illegal, then quickly said, "Looking for my phone. Thought I might have left it in here when I came in earlier to grab something." Now, I couldn't remember him ever coming into my room to grab something in the first place. And if you're looking for your phone, wouldn't you call it? Check the living room? Why start with my bedroom? Still, I stepped aside and let him pass. He brushed past me, eyes low, muttering, "Guess it's not here." The air felt heavier after that, like I crossed an invisible line just by catching him in there. Over the next few days, I noticed more little things that made my stomach knot. My desk chair was slightly pulled out when I came home. A sweater I'd left crumpled on my bed was folded neatly. My laptop, which I always close, was left open one afternoon. I started feeling like my own room wasn't really mine anymore. One night, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. That's when I noticed it. The smoke detector above my bed. It had a tiny black dot in the center, smaller than a pea, but it caught the light in a weird way. I'd never paid much attention to it before, but now I found myself squinting at it. Was it a hole, or just part of the design? I told myself it was nothing, that smoke detectors have weird little components sometimes, that I was already on edge and starting to imagine things. But deep down, a voice whispered that something wasn't right, and I really wish I'd listened to it sooner. When you live with someone long enough, you get used to the idea that your privacy is limited. Shared kitchen, shared living room, fine. But your bedroom? That's supposed to be sacred. After the whole black dot in the smoke detector thing, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd be brushing my teeth, lying in bed, cooking, and my eyes would drift to that little spot in the ceiling. I even stood on my desk one night just so as to get a closer look. From up there, it definitely looked like a tiny lens, but I still wasn't sure. So I called my friend Lena. Lena's one of those people who knows a little bit about everything. She used to work at an electronics store, and she's the kind of friend who will tell you straight up when you're overreacting or when you're not reacting enough. I told her over the phone, "Hey, I need you to come over. There's something weird in my room." She didn't even ask questions, just said, "On my way." When she arrived, I pointed straight at the smoke detector. "What am I looking at?" she asked, tilting her head. "That black dot," I said. "Does that look normal to you?" She dragged my desk chair over, climbed up, and leaned close. Within 2 seconds, she turned to look at me with wide eyes. "Dude, that's a camera." I felt my stomach drop. "You're sure?" 100%. This isn't a smoke detector, or at least it was one, and someone modified it. "See this tiny ring? That's a lens housing, and the dot isn't centered where the smoke sensor would be." I don't know how to describe the feeling that came over me except to say it was like ice water pouring down my spine. My brain started racing. How long had it been there? Was it recording audio too? Where was it sending the footage? How much had it seen? Lena climbed down and grabbed my arm. "If there's one, there's probably more. Let's check the rest of the apartment." We started in the living room. It looked normal: couch, TV, coffee table, but Lena froze in front of the wall clock. "That's not a normal clock," she said. I frowned. "It looks fine to me." She took it down and turned it over. There, nestled behind the clock hands, was another lens. I felt sick. That clock faced both the hallway to the bedrooms and the couch, meaning it had a clear shot of me walking in and out, watching TV, talking on the phone, everything. I sat down hard on the couch. "How many do you think there are?" Lena shook her head. "Could be anywhere. Kitchen appliances, vents, even stuffed animals." My hands were shaking. What the hell do I do? She gave me this look, part pity, part anger. "You need to get proof and you need to get out, but first, we should find out how bad this is." That's when I heard it. The sound of keys in the front door. We both froze. Tyler was home, and not just home early. Normally he didn't get back until late afternoon. It was barely 2 p.m. Lena mouthed, "Hide it." I scrambled to put the clock back on the wall, heart pounding so loud I was sure he'd hear it. She stepped away from the smoke detector and casually grabbed a soda from the fridge just as Tyler walked in. He glanced at her, then at me. "Oh, hey." I forced a smile. "Hey man, this is Lena. We're just hanging out." He nodded slowly, eyes flicking between us. "Cool." For a split second, I thought he knew. I thought he could see it on my face. He went into his room, shutting the door with that same solid click of the lock. I let out a shaky breath. Lena whispered. You cannot stay here tonight. But I didn't leave. I didn't even move. Because part of me was still processing the fact that I'd been living here for weeks, maybe months, with cameras watching me. I didn't know if Tyler was watching right now. I didn't know if there were more I hadn't found yet. All I knew was that when I went to bed that night, every shadow in my room felt like an eye, and I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. I'd spent the entire night staring at that smoke detector, imagining a blinking red light behind the plastic, even though it was too small to see from my bed. Every creak of the building made me flinch. By sunrise, my brain was so wound up it felt like I'd swallowed caffeine straight from the can. When Tyler left around 8 a.m., I waited. I needed to be sure he was gone. Only when I heard the elevator doors down the hall open and close did I finally move. That's when I started my search. I began with the obvious spots anywhere that faced areas where I spent a lot of time. Bathroom was first. I pulled over a chair and checked the vent above the shower. My heart sank. Nestled behind the slats was another tiny black lens. This one angled down, directly at the shower. I had to grip the sink just to steady myself. That wasn't paranoia anymore. That wasn't, maybe I'm overreacting. That was proof. Next was the kitchen. I unscrewed the cover on the overhead light. There it was, another camera tucked alongside the wiring, aimed at the counter and stove. Then I went to my bedroom bookshelf. I started pulling out books and photo frames, running my hands along the back. I almost missed it. A pinhole camera drilled into the wood, disguised behind a fake decorative screw. It felt like every time I found one, my chest tightened just a little more. The hallway had a small smoke alarm near the ceiling. I popped the cover off. Yep, another one. This one was pointed right at my bedroom door. It didn't make sense. Why would you need a hallway camera in a 2-bedroom apartment unless you wanted to track every time someone came or went? The last one I found nearly broke me. There was a stuffed toy on the couch, a generic teddy bear that I assumed Tyler had since before I moved in. I picked it up, more out of paranoia than suspicion, but when I squeezed it, I felt something hard inside. I got a pair of scissors and sliced the seam. Inside was a tiny lens, dead center in one of its glossy button eyes. I just sat there, holding that bear, wondering how many hours of my life had been watched through it. At this point, I knew there were at least 7 cameras, but something kept gnawing at me. Where was the footage going? They weren't wired to anything I could see. That meant wireless. I opened my laptop and checked the Wi-Fi network list. My own network was there, plus one labeled simply Net 204. I'd never seen it before. It was locked, but the signal strength was strong, meaning it was coming from somewhere inside the apartment. That's when I thought about Tyler's room. His door was always locked when he wasn't in it. He never let me inside, not even to borrow something. But I'd seen enough of those true crime videos to know, if there was the recording equipment, it would be in there. I walked over and tried the knob. Locked, of course. I got down on my knees and peered under the door. That's when I saw it. Against the far wall, in the corner, a small black cabinet, maybe 3 feet tall. No handles, just a lock. Big enough to store a laptop, a router, maybe multiple hard drives. I stood up, my hands clammy. Part of me wanted to grab my bag, walk out, and never come back. My brain screamed that it wasn't worth it, that whatever was in there would only make things worse. But another part of me needed to know, needed proof. If I went to the police without evidence, it would be my word against his. But if I could catch him in the act accessing the cameras, there'd be no way he could talk his way out of it. That's when I remembered something Lena had said the day before. If you think he's watching you, maybe you should watch him. I had an old cheap USB camera in a desk drawer, one of those $10 things I'd use for video calls back when my laptop's webcam broke. I plugged it into my spare laptop, propped it up inside the hallway cabinet near his door, and angled it so it had a clear shot of the space in front of that little black cabinet. If Tyler accessed it, I'd see it. When I finally sat down on my bed, I realized my hands were trembling. Not from exhaustion, from adrenaline. Because for the first time since moving in, I wasn't wondering if I was being watched. I knew I was. The decoy cam ran for 3 nights before I caught him. I'd gotten into the habit of pretending to be asleep by 11 p.m., just lying still in bed with the lights out while my mind ran laps around the same thought. What is he doing with those cameras? On the 3rd night, around 1:40 a.m., my cheap little camera lit up with movement. The grainy feed showed Tyler slipping quietly out of his bedroom in a hoodie and socks. He glanced both ways down the hall like someone making sure the coast was clear, then bent down in front of that locked black cabinet. He pulled out a key from around his neck, unlocked it, and swung the door open. Inside was a laptop. And not just that, there were blinking LED lights, which I now recognize as external hard drives, multiple of them. He sat cross-legged on the floor, screen angled toward him, and started clicking. I couldn't see exactly what was on it from my camera's angle, but I could see his face. He was smiling, not a casual smile. Not a haha, this is funny smile. The kind of smile you'd see on someone unwrapping a gift they'd been waiting months for. The next morning, I could barely look at him when he passed me in the kitchen. My mind screamed at me to just grab my stuff and get out, but my gut told me that if I left without proof, he'd just keep doing it to someone else. So I waited until Saturday, when he usually went to the gym for a few hours. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, I grabbed my phone, ran to his room, and went straight for the cabinet. The lock was a problem, but not for long. A flathead screwdriver and some careful wiggling were enough to pop it open. Inside sat his silver laptop, 3 black hard drives stacked like bricks, and a small Wi-Fi router labeled Net 204. I opened the laptop. no password. He really hadn't expected anyone to get this far. The desktop was chaos files everywhere, but one folder stood out. Alex. My name. There were other folders too, each with dates as titles, some labeled with different names. Maybe past roommates. I double-clicked my folder. Inside, dozens of subfolders named with dates going back to the day I moved in. I opened one at random. The first file was labeled bathroom-07-14-2am.mp4. I didn't want to click it. Every part of me screamed don't, but my hand still moved. The video was from the vent camera I'd found. There I was, brushing my teeth in an oversized t-shirt, then getting into the shower. I slammed the spacebar to pause it, but the damage was done. My stomach churned. I clicked another file. This one showed me asleep tossing and turning, blanket slipping down from the bookshelf camera in my bedroom. Another was me changing clothes, captured in crisp detail from the hallway smoke detector's angle. It was all there. Every vulnerable moment I thought was private, stored in neat little digital boxes for him to open whenever he wanted. My shock started to turn into something else, something hotter, rage. But right under that was fear, a tight, cold coil in my chest. If I confronted him now, what would he do? Delete everything? Deny it? Or worse, get violent? I thought about every night I'd walk to the bathroom in half sleep, every time I'd dance around my room with music blasting, every lazy Sunday I'd stayed in bed. They weren't memories anymore. They were footage, and it was all his. I closed the laptop carefully, put everything back exactly as I'd found it, and relocked the cabinet. Storming in and screaming at him would have been satisfying for about 10 seconds. But then what? I'd lose my chance to get real evidence. No, I had to be smart. I had to make sure when I exposed him, it was in a way that he couldn't squirm out of. So I sat in my room that night, staring at my own cheap decoy camera, and started planning. Not just to catch him accessing his setup. Not just to prove he was filming me. I was going to make sure when this blew up, it would blow up big. I didn't sleep much after finding those files. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that folder with my name on it. By the next morning, my decision was made. I wasn't going to wait for him to slip up on his own. I was going to make him slip. The first step was simple but nerve-wracking. Copy everything. That Saturday afternoon, while Tyler was at the gym, I broke into the cabinet again. This time, I came prepared a 1 terabyte portable drive I'd bought that morning in cash. I plugged it into his laptop and dragged the entire content of the Alex folder over. The progress bar mocked me. 3 hours remaining. I kept one ear trained on the hallway the whole time, heart hammering at every creak. I was sweating like I'd run a marathon by the time it finally said, transfer complete. I didn't just take my folder, I took everything. Every folder with every name, every video, every date. This wasn't just about me anymore. If these other names were past roommates or neighbors, they deserved justice too. I stashed the drive inside an old shoebox under my bed, hidden behind a mess of tangled charging cables. It would take a search warrant to find it. Next, I called Lena. She didn't even let me finish before cutting in. You need to go to the police right now. I told her I wanted to, but I also wanted to make sure they couldn't write this off as roommate dispute or some misunderstanding. She was quiet for a moment, then said, okay, then we trap him. You give him rope and we let him hang himself. Her plan was risky, but it made sense. I'd pretend to leave for a weekend trip, giving him the perfect opportunity to mess with my stuff without fear of me walking in. The next Friday, I casually told Tyler over breakfast. Heading to see my cousin for the weekend. I'll be back late Sunday. He just nodded, not looking up from his cereal. I couldn't tell if it was indifference or calculation. That evening, I packed a small overnight bag, locked my door with a cheap padlock I'd bought to make it look like I cared about security but not enough to be a real obstacle, and left. What I actually did was slip down the back stairwell, cross the alley, and let myself into the apartment building's storage room in the basement. From there, I had a perfect view of the front door through a small dusty window. At 9:12 p.m., Tyler came out of his room. By 9:15, he was in mine. I'd left one of my own hidden cameras running inside a small one Lena had lent me that looked like a regular phone charger plugged into the wall. Through the live feed on my phone, I watched him unlock my door with the key. He didn't even hesitate. First, he walked straight to the bookshelf camera and fiddled with it, adjusting the angle slightly. Then he moved to the smoke detector, tilting it down just a hair. He sat on my bed, not just sat. He ran his hand along my pillow, then lay back for a second, staring up at the ceiling. The sight made my skin crawl. He didn't take anything. He didn't break anything, but the violation was complete. And now I had him on video entering my locked room, touching my stuff and tampering with hidden cameras. When he finally left, locking the door behind him like nothing happened, I stayed in that storage room for another hour just to make sure he was really done. By the time I crept back upstairs, my phone had already saved the footage to a secure cloud folder. It was undeniable now. He wasn't just a weird roommate. He was a predator. The thing about having undeniable proof is that it flips a switch inside you. For weeks, I'd been living in this constant loop of paranoia, dread, and anger, afraid of making the wrong move, afraid of him finding out I knew. But now, I had him, on video, in my room, tampering with cameras he'd hidden there. This wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was fact. I didn't call the police right away that night. Part of me wanted to walk in, shove my phone in his face, and watch him squirm. But Lena's voice was in my head. Don't confront him yourself, let them catch him. That way, there's no he said. They said. She was right. I wasn't going to give him the chance to delete anything pack up, and vanish before the cops could get there. So the next morning, after pretending to come back from my trip, I spent the day keeping things as normal as possible. Tyler made a sandwich in the kitchen while I scrolled on my phone like I was picturing smashing his laptop into pieces. That evening, I told him I was going to bed early. What I actually did was grab my bag, my portable drive of evidence, and step outside into the cool night air. I walked down the block, found a well-lit bus stop, and called the police. The dispatcher's tone changed as soon as I explained. You have video evidence of him placing cameras? Yes, in my bedroom and bathroom. And you've secured that evidence? Yes, multiple copies. They told me to stay where I was and keep my distance from the apartment. Within 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up to the curb near our building. I watched from across the street as they approached our door. It was almost anticlimactic at first. No sirens, no yelling, just a knock, followed by a muffled exchange. Then they stepped inside. Minutes ticked by. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. And then, movement. One officer appeared in the hallway outside our unit, radioing something in. The other walked out with Tyler not in cuffs yet, but looking pale. That's when I realized what was happening. They'd walked in on him mid-camera maintenance. Later, I'd find out he had been in the middle of swapping an SD card in the smoke detector camera when they came through the door. When they asked what he was doing, he tried to spin it. It's a home security system. My roommate knows about it. It's for protection. That's when they called me in. I crossed the street, handed over my portable drive, and showed them the files right there in the hallway. Video of me in the bathroom. Video of me sleeping. Video of him unlocking my door while I was away and adjusting the devices. The officer's expressions went from neutral to tight-jawed. One turned back to Tyler. You want to stick with that security system story? He stammered something about misunderstandings and just checking for mold, and then the cuffs came out. The sound of the metal clicking shut around his wrist was something I'll never forget. As they walked him out, a few neighbors poked their heads out of their doors. One older woman gasped and muttered, "I knew it." Turns out, Tyler had lived in the building for a while before I moved in, and there had been rumors. A girl on the 3rd floor once complained about feeling watched. Another guy swore someone had been in his room when he wasn't home, but no one had proof, so nothing stuck. Until now. I stayed just long enough to give my statement at the scene, then went back inside with one of the officers to pack. It's hard to describe how disgusting it feels to touch your own stuff after realizing someone's been secretly filming you with it in the background. My bed, my clothes, my books, it all felt tainted. I shoved what I could into bags and boxes, not caring if things got wrinkled or tangled. By the time I walked out with the last load, Tyler was gone. The patrol cars too. The building was quiet, except for the low buzz of neighbors whispering to each other behind closed doors. Outside, I stood for a second with my things piled at my feet, breathing in the night air. Relief, disgust, exhaustion, all tangled together. I didn't know where I'd sleep that night. Maybe Lena's couch, maybe a motel, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being watched. Tyler didn't come back to the apartment after that night. The police kept me updated over the next few weeks. At first, it was just in custody, awaiting arraignment. Then it became formally charged with multiple counts of invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and possession of illicit recordings. Each charge sounded like a line from a crime show. Each one made my skin crawl a little more. It turns out the folders on his laptop weren't just mine. They'd found names of former roommates, a neighbor from the next building over, and even a girl who'd come over for a party months ago. He had years worth of footage. The DA told me it was enough to keep him away for a while, but of course, that didn't undo anything. I moved into a new apartment 2 days after the arrest. New locks, new neighborhood, new everything. But my brain didn't reset. The first night in the new place, I caught myself standing in the center of my bedroom, scanning the walls and ceiling like I was looking for sniper lasers. I checked the smoke detector twice, unscrewed the vent cover, shined a flashlight into the corners of the bookshelf. Logically, I knew there was nothing there. But logic didn't matter much when every shadow felt like a camera lens. Lena visited a lot in those first weeks. She'd bring takeout, forced me to watch dumb sitcoms, and gently talked me down when I spiraled into what-if scenarios. She was the one who finally said, you should talk to someone. Not me, a professional. I resisted at first. I didn't want to make it a bigger deal in my head. But the truth was, it was a big deal. It had been for months, so I went. Therapy was strange at first. The idea of sitting across from a stranger and explaining how my roommate secretly recorded me in my own bathroom felt surreal. But the therapist didn't flinch. She nodded, took notes, and asked questions I hadn't considered, like how much of my fear was about Tyler himself, and how much was about realizing how easily someone can cross your boundaries without you knowing. That one hit me hard. I also found an online support group for people who dealt with stalkers, hidden cameras, and privacy violations. Some stories were worse than mine. Some were eerily similar. In every single one, the person had noticed little things, tiny, easy to dismiss moments that didn't make sense until much later. Reading those made me feel less paranoid and more prepared. Tyler pled guilty eventually. He got time not nearly enough, in my opinion, but also a long probation period with restrictions on where he could live and work. Part of me wanted to see him at sentencing, to look him in the eye and make sure he knew he hadn't broken me. Another part of me didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing I was still thinking about him at all. In the end, I didn't go. Now, months later, I'm sitting at my kitchen table in my new apartment, writing this out for all of you. And I want to be clear about a few things. First, if you ever get that weird gut feeling about someone, listen to it. I'm not saying you should start drilling holes in your walls looking for cameras every time your roommate locks their door. But if little things keep stacking up, object moved, odd comments, someone knowing things you didn't tell them, don't brush it off. Second here are some of the subtle red flags I only recognize now. Overly interested in your schedule. Tyler always seemed to know when I'd be home or out, even if I hadn't told him. Jokes that reveal private knowledge. That comment about me singing in the shower wasn't a coincidence. Small physical changes. The bookshelf tilt. The slightly adjusted smoke detector. The feeling that something had been moved just an inch or two. Overprotective about their own space. His room was locked like Fort Knox, but he felt entitled to wander into mine. Individually, they might mean nothing. Together, they're a pattern. I'm okay now. I still do a quick sweep of new places I stay in: hotels, Airbnbs, even friends' guest rooms, but it's not obsessive anymore. It's just part of my routine. I feel safe again, but I'll never ignore that gut feeling again. If my story stops even one person from going through what I did, then sharing it here was worth it. Because the truth is, being watched without knowing it doesn't just take away your privacy, it rewires the way you see the world. And once you see it differently, you can't unsee it.